Welcome to this episode of the Geoff Newton Show, helping coaches and healers attract aligned clients, stand out, and build an inspiring personal brand. I'm your host, Geoff Newton, and we have a very special guest with us today. She is a trauma-informed healing arts practitioner, coach, and the founder of Wellness in Harmony. With a background in social work and nearly 20 years of experience supporting healing and transformation, Linda blends intuitive energy work with her grounded and compassionate approach. Her own healing journey, especially around trauma, has played a huge role in shaping both her personal growth and her path as a practitioner. And today, she helps others navigate their own healing and transformational process through her deep listening, her wisdom, and her intuitive presence. Today, we're going to explore how her journey unfolded, how her own trauma healing has helped her as a practitioner become more aligned and a better service to her clients, and why being trauma-informed is so important for any sort of coaching, healing, or trauma work. So welcome, Linda Dieffenbach, to the show today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yay. So our first question, being trauma-informed, that's a topic that's almost a buzzword now, and yet it wasn't so long ago that it wasn't very well known at all. And I think some people that are watching know what it means, and some don't know what it means, and some think they know what it means, but maybe aren't too sure. So can you help us first understand a little more about what it means to be trauma-informed? What's that all about?
So being trauma-informed is, in part, just being simply aware, having an understanding of the profound complexity and depth of impact that traumatic experiences can have in a person's life, how it impacts our nervous system, how it affects our behaviors, how it affects our mental, emotional, and physical well-being, and being able to hold that awareness when we're supporting someone so that we can hold them with compassion rather than judgment, and we can create safety around it.
And is being trauma-informed something that's for everybody? Is it something for specific people? Like, who is it for?
Well, in my opinion, I think that we all would benefit from having an awareness and understanding about trauma, because I don't think there's really anybody on the planet that has not been impacted by some form of trauma in their life. And when we have an awareness of it, then even if just, you don't have to be in a healing or coaching type of role, but just in the way that we interact with our friends, with our family, with our colleagues, with our, people that we know in the world, people that we interact in the world, if we have some awareness of the profound impact of trauma, then we are able to be more present with them. We're able to hold people with a lot less judgment. So when we see certain behavior patterns, for example, oftentimes just by our nature, we see somebody doing something and we immediately go into judgment, and there's, they're wrong, they're bad, they're something, and when we are trauma aware and trauma informed, we change the lens of how we look at other people and how people act and behave, and can start to recognize there's something going on there. And this is about being more compassionate with people rather than immediately dismissing and judging them. And it's not about making excuses for someone's actions, but it just gives you a different lens of understanding. Like, okay, this person is extremely agitated and reacting in a way that is, incongruent with the events that are happening. That would be an indication that there's something going on within that person that is probably related to current or past trauma. And so we can respond with more presence. We can stay more grounded instead of being reactive, and respond in a way that could be supportive and help diffuse a situation, for example, rather than escalating a situation. Somebody who is angry, for example, who, out in public at the grocery store and just overreacting and, responding to, some kind of minor perceived insult. If we meet that with aggression and anger, it just escalates and explodes. Mm-hmm. If we can meet that in a way that is calmer, steadier, grounded, and hold some level of compassion, then that can de-escalate the situation. That can diffuse what's happening and help the person come back into a state of regulation.
Mm.
we live in a culture that is the way we're conditioned to be in the world and show up in the world is generally very toxic. And that's universal across the world. And that the conditioning alone, the way we're trained to be and not be, it alone is traumatizing and creates a lot of challenges within us. We feel like we have to walk around the world wearing a mask, hiding who we are, not sharing our emotions, not talking about our pain, feeling like we're not allowed to be, we have to hide aspects of ourselves. And when we're moving through the world in pain, wearing a mask, hiding who we are, the impact of that tends to come out sideways, I guess is the best way to say that. As they say, we never really know what somebody's going through. So we see somebody being overreactive or angry or, hiding in the corner and, not engaging. Go into judgment about that. But there's so much pain that people are carrying. And if we can meet them with some compassion and kindness, it can shift so much in person. If we can allow somebody to be as they are, then that really can transform on so many levels.
Okay, so this is obviously an important topic, but I'm curious what got you started down this road in the first place, because not everyone I know is so well informed on trauma. So what's the story there? How did you get interested in this topic?
So I came through my own personal healing journey. I carried a lot of unaddressed and unrecognized trauma myself from my childhood. And that created a tremendous amount of difficulty for me. And there were a lot of challenging patterns and survival strategies that I had adapted out of that. And when I was 15, I had attempted to end my life and had been hospitalized at that time. And I had been through therapy prior to that and during that time. And one of the things that happened, I had been hospitalized after my suicide attempt. And one of the things that happened was that I was told by my therapists that there was nothing wrong with my life, that my family was amazing, and that my suicide attempt was nothing but attention-seeking behavior. And there was that alone was incredibly traumatizing to me, because the people who were meant to help me were the ones who told me that there was nothing, completely invalidated my experience. And I took that to mean that whatever was wrong in my life must be me.
Yeah. Wow.
And because of that, I shut down, because I then believed that I was the problem. And so I put on a big mask and proceeded to move through the world in a way that said, I was fine. Everything was fine. And I shut down my own emotions, my own needs, and I focused very externally on taking care of other people because I completely disconnected from self. So I really didn't have any awareness anymore of what my needs were, what I wanted. Even just basic preferences of things. I deferred. I constantly deferred, if that you think that's good, then great. And I committed myself to taking care of other people to my own expense. And all this time I felt really insane. I felt really out of control. I was self-medicating and I was getting into really toxic, unhealthy relationships. And I was just very lost.
Yeah.
And so a couple of things happened, simultaneously. I started going to a meditation class, with who now is one of my mentors, Elizabeth Frediani. And within that class, I started learning about her work. And I signed up to do a series of sessions with her. And what was amazing, among many things that were amazing about this, in the course of 3 sessions with her, I made more progress than I had in my entire lifetime of therapy.
Wow.
And she works within the energy field. It has the look and feel of a counseling session. You're talking and I'm sharing and, working through things. But she is reading my energy. I was very good. Of course, like I said, I was very shut down from self. So I was very good at disconnecting and deflecting and hiding and avoiding, which is why traditional therapy just did not work for me, because I could talk for an hour about nothing.
Right.
Yeah. Or could be easily sidestep anything that was brought up. But she's highly intuitive. She's tuned into me. She's tuned into my energy. And she just kept bringing me back and bringing me back and bringing me into the places that I needed to go to. Mm-hmm. And she held space with me with such amazing presence, was very attuned and very compassionate and very supported, but very clear. Mm. And she helped me see, for one thing, some of what I was going through. But she brought validation and awareness and compassion, and she allowed me, I was witnessed. Yeah. She allowed me to be witnessed in my pain and in my dysfunction. And that opened the door for me to start really going down a deep personal healing journey.
Wow. And
she had, like I said, we were in this meditation class together. And at the end of this, I think it was like an 8-week class, something like that. But she invited the class to learn how to do her work. And of course, again, I'm a helper, I have to take care of others. So of course I was like, was so amazing for me. I was like, I have to learn how to do this. I have to know how to do this to be able to bring this work to other people. And in learning from her, this work is focused within the chakras. And at that time, I had no real concept of them. I knew they existed and they had colors. That was kind of it. Yeah. There was balance, imbalance. I didn't really know anything about it. But I started to learn through her the deep, rich complexity of these energy systems and how they impact us and how they affect our lives and how our life experiences are processed within the chakras and how those unhealed, unprocessed experiences manifest in our lives. So I started to develop a deep understanding of them. And at the same time, I was working in a program, a behavioral health care program, and they were introducing the sanctuary model for trauma-informed care into the program. And I was one of the core team members that was responsible for training everyone in the center about trauma and what it was, how it impacted people. And so these two things were coming together at the same time.
Wow.
As I was on my own deep personal healing journey, and gaining this awareness and understanding of both the chakras and about trauma was so eye-opening to me because my life suddenly started to make sense. And I started to realize, one, I wasn't crazy, which was a really nice awareness.
Right.
Okay, there's really, a reason for all of these things. And now I started to understand these patterns that I had that were just so persistent that I couldn't seem to control. I started to understand where they were coming from.
Yeah.
And in that awareness, I started to be able to make changes in my life around those patterns. I started to be able to go into those deeper wounds and bring some healing and compassion. I started to change my relationship with myself and be able to hold myself with more kindness and compassion, which that alone opened the door for healing to occur. Because when you're in self-judgment and self-loathing and self-hatred, it's contracting and it compounds and compounds and compounds and you can't breathe in that space.
Yeah. There's nowhere for the light to get in. Yeah.
No, there's nowhere. And that was the space that I pretty much lived in.
Mm.
As I started to be able to hold myself with some kindness and compassion, it brought space for movement. It brought space for the light to come in, as you say, so I could start making changes. I could start actually looking at these different patterns of behavior and where they were coming from with a place of understanding, with a place of kindness. And through that was allowed to breathe, allowed to move, and allowed to grow. So it created space for growth to happen where it never could have before.
Wow. It touches me, your journey, because it's so personal. And then once you had the opportunity to help others, you just said, like, sign me up. But you were already helping others. So that's also a good fit, because it sounds like it was in your childhood, right? That you said you were 15, I think.
When I attempted suicide, it was to 15.
And then if we fast forward to this period where you're starting to get trained in the chakras and you're starting to learn about trauma-informed healing modalities, how long had that been?
That started in my early 30s.
So it's like a whole lifetime. It's like another 15 years, like doubling that 15-year-old's life without being able to map and orient what's really going on and not having the light get in and not having a real chance for change. And suddenly you get gifted this new life where there's room to breathe, there's kindness, there's self-compassion, there's a map, like, you know what's going on, you know where this stuff is coming from, and you can change it. You've got agency, you've got power. That must have been like a monumental shift, not just a small one.
It was huge. It was absolutely huge. It was truly transformational. Just coming into that awareness and understanding alone was phenomenal in what it shifted in me and what it opened the door to allow. And so now, as I say, like, the journey still continues, but now when things come up, when old patterns and survival strategies come into play in my life, I can look at them very differently. Instead of it being looking at them with anger and frustration. Well, there's a little frustration, but instead of looking at them with like anger and self-loathing, I can look at it in a way that says, there's something in me that's trying to be protected.
Yeah.
And so let's look at what that is and where that's coming from. Again, hold compassion and look at, what's my little inner child? What's my little inner warrior trying to do? What's it trying to protect me from? What do I need to be paying attention to? And how do I shift this to a healthier response to life?
Do you think that makes you able to work with some types of people and help those types of people who maybe they might not have literally the same past, but maybe they have a similar past, or maybe they have the same inner experience as you've had, or same pattern of self-loathing or judgment, or places where the light can't get in, where other people might not be able to help them as much? Do you find because of your journey and because of what you've learned, you're able to help those people?
Absolutely. And doesn't have to be even similar experiences to me, because the understanding and awareness of trauma allows you to hold space for a bigger range of experiences. So there's people who I work with in my practice who have experiences who are way far different from mine. And their responses to those things may be way far different from mine, but there's still a depth of understanding of where these patterns came from and how their experiences have affected them. And part of what I feel has happened within my personal healing work then translates into my professional work is that I am able to have that deeper understanding of how complex trauma is and how complex the energy system is and how it affects us. so that it creates a very vast container within which to do my work.
Yes.
So where someone can come into that space with me and feel safe and feel like they can be open and feel like they can share things that maybe they're not otherwise able to share.
Yeah.
Because they know that those deeper parts of themselves that they carry a lot of shame around are not going to be judged, that they're going to be held with compassion. And that alone is incredibly healing. It's not something that you need to fix necessarily. It's just something that you allow space to be, allow them to breathe, allow them to be witnessed, allow their hurt and their pain and their shame to be held safely. And to know that they can be completely honest with and in touch with who they are and the whole of them in a way that they probably have never experienced in other circumstances. Because there is that safety. There is that container of non-judgment and compassion.
Lovely. I'm also curious about your journey with this professionally. How was that? And what I mean by that is you were already a helper, right? Because you said when you disconnected from yourself, because, okay, this is the problem and apparently nothing's wrong, but I don't know how to be with this. I don't want to be with this. I'm a problem. It's a problem. I'm just going to help other people. You turned even your career path into that, right? You were doing professional work with others. So when it came time, when you started taking this course and wanted to help others with it, a lot of coaches will experience things like imposter syndrome or think, okay, who am I to help people with this? Was that easier for you because you were already in a role of helping others, so there wasn't a big transition? Or did it feel like a big change of roles somehow to start doing this new activity, new path?
A little of both. I feel like being in a helping profession is just part of who I am.
Yeah.
But that basically through my own trauma experience and that shutting down and everything, like that all just became, it all kind of went sideways. So instead of being able to really fully support people in a healthy way, it was more in a enmeshed, codependent kind of way, where I needed to be a fixer. I needed to be the one who had the answers. I needed to be able to make sure that you were okay so that I could be okay. And so that was the space that I was originally in. So when I was working in health and human services and social work and all of that, like that was initially that kind of space that I was in. And I could be effective to a degree, but it was very dependent on my ability to fix something or fix someone.
Yes.
And I was not really able to be as present with people because I couldn't be present with myself. This really shifted in a very big way how I started to show up for people, because I didn't need to fix them. I didn't need to change where they were. I could be present with those big, messy emotions, whether it was extreme grief and pain or anger. I could be present with that far more than I was able to before. Like if somebody came to me with a really big problem and really big, messy emotion, my instinct was, I got to fix this. I got to pat you down and make you feel better so that I feel better.
Yes.
So that shifted that tremendously, where, that old pattern of needing to fix certainly still shows up in my life, but I'm more aware of it. So for example, professionally, if I'm working with a client and say they bring something to me that, I have no familiarity whatsoever with, there's just a different experience that I've never encountered. My fixer is going, okay, what do I do with this? How do I fix this? How do I help this? What do I have to do? What kind of processes do I need to put into play? What do I have to, bring into this session to help them? So that would have been my own mentality. So you get very stuck in my head. But now, so for one, that comes up now, that does come up. That's just an indication. Okay, I'm not present. And I just refocus and tune into my heart center and focus back in on them and the energy and the flow of the session rather than, what should I do next?
Right.
But that was always my set point. What do I do next? How do I help? How do I make this better? So whereas now I just tune into the energy and tune into the person and stay present, stay in my heart, and whatever needs to happen in the session will emerge on its own.
Yes.
So it's shifted the way I work significantly and helped me to be able to support my clients in a much more effective way.
Yeah, I can imagine. And using the analogy we were talking about before, if I'm with a client and they are a bit hard on themselves and there's nowhere for the light to get in, and in that moment, I'm in my head, what should I do next? There's nowhere for the light to get in for me either. And then that's a struggling session at best.
Yeah.
So it's got to get in somewhere. So if I can get out of my head and out of my feeling that this isn't okay and their feeling that this isn't okay, then a new possibility can emerge. So I love what you said there.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Because if I'm in my head, nothing's going to move.
Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes, I'm trying to force something to happen. I drop into my heart and space opens up.
So it sounds like when you were doing this professionally, there was some naturalness, but I think you're also saying a little bit of a learning curve to bring yourself into your heart and less in your head.
Yeah, definitely. I had to just personally, I had to really work on my own stuff, and start to recognize my own patterns and how, the survival strategies that I had adopted. And, there are some survival strategies that are bad, that are kind of easy to spot, so like going out and partying all the time, that's pretty universally considered not a great survival strategy.
Yeah, a little
right?
more obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. But being a fixer, being a people pleaser, things like that, those are survival strategies that tend to be reinforced.
Yes. Applauded. Yeah.
Yeah. Reinforced and applauded and not as easy to self-identify.
Right.
So even having poor boundaries and things like that, like those are all things that can be very strongly reinforced and not as easy to see. So I had to learn that about myself.
Yes.
Like what I was doing. And, I had people in my life who mirrored that back for me or, like called me out on those things. And said, what, like, what you're doing, what I'm trying to fix. I had some people who, friends and family members who's like, this isn't helping. I need you to listen. I need you to be present with me. Yeah. I don't need you to fix this.
Yeah.
And it's like, thank you for that, for me, because that helped me understand that that's what my pattern was. So I had to do a lot of deep internal work, and I had to gain a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah.
So that I could see when those patterns were emerging, when I was abandoning self for the sake of others, when I was jumping into fixer mode or people pleaser mode, when I was not holding strong boundaries, when I was stepping out of my power or giving my power to other people, all of those patterns I had to gain some awareness around. So through that awareness, then I also had to learn where they were showing up in my practice.
Yes.
And it was definitely a process. It wasn't like suddenly like, oh, I learned about trauma and I learned about the chakras and I started to heal and boom, it was done. Like it's an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
There's still times that I find in my relationships, whether it's personal or professional, where I will abandon my power, I will abandon self, or I will abandon my boundaries, or I will jump in fixer mode or people pleaser mode, or just defer to others rather than myself. But I'm more aware of it now. So when it happens, most of the time, when it happens, I can catch it.
Yes.
And then take different action.
It sounds so good because so many of the coaches and healers that I've worked with, or even just that I know, and this includes myself, I noticed that because we're, I'll call it service-oriented beings, right? We care about the welfare of others. So that boundary, that line where it slips into codependence, where it slips into I'm only okay if you're okay, where my identity or my value as a coach or even as a person is dependent on how you react, where your before and after goes, your result, how much you change. So all of that, these can be literal, these have a root, and it could be a traumatic root in my past that if I'm not aware of, I'll just kind of keep experiencing stress of that, the stress of caring too much how it goes, or the stress of having a weak boundary or attracting the wrong kind of clients or dynamics or situations, on and on and on. So I love what you're sharing here because it really is medicine for, I think, a lot of people in the entrepreneurship journey, and also I love what you shared about, okay, there's your healing journey and what you've got, the medicine you got from it, but then you're putting that medicine into practice at deeper and deeper levels the further you go, of course, in your whole life, but also in your coaching or entrepreneurial life, because that's where it comes up and that's where you have to iron out the kinks. And again, I think that's a really beautiful part of the journey if you can catch it. And if you can't catch it, I can imagine maybe coaching's less fun, maybe you don't like your clients, maybe you get burnt out, other symptoms. Hey, maybe you should get a little more trauma aware, trauma informed, comb through your own journey, find out where those things come from, and then watch as you enjoy your work more, you have better boundaries and your clients get better results as a result of you not being obsessed with them getting a better result.
Yeah, my work has changed significantly. I am far better able to be a strong container for my clients to step into, and provide much more support and be much more effective in what I do when I'm not in my trauma mode, when I'm not in my trauma strategies and my survival strategies, where I'm making it about me.
Right.
Because that's really, like, as a fixer, that's what you're doing. Like, you think that you're helping and you're supporting others, but really what you're doing is it's about you and making you feel safer by being able to help them feel better. And it's also your sense of self-worth becomes very enmeshed in that. Yeah. So if I can't fix your problem, then it's about me. I'm somehow defective. And that's not a healthy way to show up in a healing relationship and a helping relationship. So the more I'm able to step away from that, the much more effective I am as a practitioner, as a coach. Yeah. Because it is about the clients and where they are and what they need and what kind of supports I can provide for them. But it's about them, not me. Like, you don't have to bring trauma work into your practice. Right. For these things to apply. Like, it's not necessarily, being trauma informed does not necessarily mean that you're helping people heal from trauma. Right. And I think that's a key distinction. Yeah. Being trauma informed means you have that deep depth of understanding what trauma is, how it affects them, and how it's affecting their overall, the way they show up in life. Mm. So you're not doing, you're not necessarily helping them heal from rape and incest and child abuse and neglect and abandonment and all of those things. That's not what that's about. Mm. That's more of the job for the therapist. Right. But as a coach and a healing practitioner, you're able to hold space in a way that allows them to work through their self-sabotage, those survival strategies are what we perceive as self-sabotage and limiting beliefs and things like that. So if you understand that trauma may be a factor there, and these beliefs may have developed out of that, then that gives you a totally different lens within which you can work with that person.
I understand you've got a trauma-informed energy healing and coaching certification coming up. And so it sounds like the people who take that course with you, that program, that certification, they're not necessarily therapists working with people on their traumas directly. It's that they're taking this so that they have more awareness, more capacity, and more tools, more options, more, again, just that awareness of what's actually going on in order to help their clients in what it is they do focus on, whether it's coaching or something else.
Yeah, in that program, the foundational piece of it is really understanding what trauma is, different types of trauma, how it affects us, and the depth of complexity of how it affects us, how it affects our nervous system. You'll learn about the vagus nerve and dysregulation that occurs in our bodies from trauma that becomes a somewhat fixed state. And learn how to recognize when someone is dysregulated, learn how to co-regulate, learn how to regulate yourself, and how to create safety within the context of the healing relationship or the service-based relationship. So that's really the foundational piece of it, is just giving that understanding of how these things show up, how people abandon their power in relationships with, and this is a very kind of organic thing that happens in relationships, whether it's with a doctor, a therapist, a healer, a coach, a teacher. We often show up in those relationships like you are the one in power and I am subservient to you. So looking at that dynamic and how do you address that and prevent that from happening and making sure you're giving the power back to the person and not letting them give their power to you, for example.
Yeah.
So that's like the first level, is really getting into that deep understanding of these dynamics that happen in the relationship, in a helping relationship, and how to navigate them. And then how to, it goes into the understanding of trauma. It goes into a deeper understanding of the chakras and how they affect people and how to read energy, how to just tie all of this together and work within the context of those dynamics to help support whomever you work with in a way that's much more effective.
It sounds like something that is needed for a lot of people out there who are already working with the themes, but maybe not aware of it, working with the symptoms, maybe working a little too hard with it. And now they can become a little more aware of how to work with it. As you were talking about it, I could easily picture the more I know about regulation, the more I know about identifying that this is a moment where this survival pattern is up. I imagine it's naturally going to transfer, some of that awareness will naturally transfer to the client themselves as well. So by me being more informed about this, they're going to be more informed and they're going to be able to self-regulate to a greater degree. That's really a gift that we can give
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because these things are just automatically going to show up in the work that we do. When we don't understand it, we don't really know how to navigate it, or we can easily get caught in the cycle that is playing out. So if we have this understanding, then we can be much more present and respond to those patterns in the moment, rather than becoming caught in getting into trauma reenactments with our clients.
Right.
Which we don't want to be in. And then it's not healthy for either us or the client. So it does make a huge difference when we're able to see it. And even if we don't see it in the moment, if we see it later on, we can still turn around and address it. Say, next session, I realized that this happened. If it's appropriate to do so. I realized the last time that we were together, this scenario played out, and address what needs to be addressed. It's important for you and your health and well-being. It's also important for the client's health and well-being.
Yes. It's really important. I find, again, coaches and healers, they're in a territory, a terrain, like you said, they're going to have, this stuff is going to come up. And what you called a reenactment, a trauma reenactment, I think it happens more often than people realize. And so when I'm with my clients and getting triggered, getting into a power dynamic, getting into a struggle, it can be about anything. It can be about late payment. It can be about an actual something that was said in the session. It can be about an unmet expectation, an email that was sent, and I slept on it and didn't reply, and then the next day I'm replying, and there's anger one way or the other. I mean, I've heard so many stories, and there is a type of emotional maturity, emotional development that people want to have with these situations, but they don't know how to have it because they just keep getting triggered. And so I think it's really valuable to hear this information that, like, those could be literally little trauma reenactments, little dances we're doing with our clients, unaware of it, that you could learn to recognize and learn to help yourself and your client through.
Yeah. I mean, even things that are very subtle oftentimes, like weak boundaries. Us having weak boundaries in our practice, not enforcing boundaries with the clients, just whether it's with the clients or just within our work itself, and not having boundaries in our time, and, allowing clients to call us at all hours and things like that. Those things can play out and we don't even realize that that's actually a trauma thing.
Yeah. I can imagine also low self-worth. Like, if I put the dots together of what we're talking about, if I could imagine undercharging, being part of a codependent thing, or having low self-worth, having weak boundaries, like you said, when it comes to clients, when it comes to my admin, my payments, whatever. This can show up in so many ways. Yeah. And a business running on underlying trauma patterns, I can't imagine being a thrilling, sustaining business.
No, not exactly. No. And here's the thing too. I think it's important to acknowledge, because I've worked in, like I said, health and human services and social services and medical. I've worked in helping professions most of my professional life.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've learned is that people who go into those professions often are people who carry a lot of trauma. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, and this includes this kind of work, so coaching and healing work as well, oftentimes we go into that unconscious, like I did, like I became a fixer. My self-worth was very much caught up in my ability to help others because nobody was helping me. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people in these professions that are carrying a lot of unaddressed trauma.
Yes.
And that plays out in how they work with their clients.
Yeah.
And it becomes very toxic oftentimes. So that's an awareness I think is really important. Mm-hmm. Is, I know I came into this work because of my trauma. Mm-hmm. And initially it was trauma avoidance.
Right.
I didn't, as evidence in my story, there was no help for me. Mm-hmm. There was nobody out there that I knew of that could help me. So nobody's going to help me. I'm going to help everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, my needs obviously are not important. My needs cannot be met. So I'm going to show up and try to do everything I can to help other people, which on the surface sounds kind of noble, but it's actually very toxic. Mm-hmm. That is how a lot of people come into the helping professions. Yeah. There is, a natural calling, a natural desire to work with people. But when there's unaddressed trauma involved, it basically gets turned on its head and becomes a very toxic way of trying to help. And that is pervasive in every helping industry. If you want a kind of comedic example, watch Frasier. The old, if you ever see the old show Frasier.
Yeah, so good.
That's such a good example of how toxic, this psychiatrist who's out there helping all these people, and his life is a disaster.
Yeah.
So he's a good example of that, but that is very pervasive in all of the helping professions. And the more we as members of the helping professions can build our own self-awareness and do our own inner work and do our own healing, the more effective we become and the safer we become as practitioners.
Amen.
Because we're no longer acting out of that toxic trauma response. We're actually coming from a more authentic space that is in integrity and is much more genuine.
Yeah. I love it. It's important you mention it because it's sort of, it's not talked about as often as it should be. Because I completely agree that, these professions attract, like you said, a lot of people who have had hardship, who are carrying pain. And it's one thing if it's pain that you're aware of and working with and able to, like you said, hold space from solid ground, help yourself and others through as you continue the journey. I think that's part of the call personally, to be this sort of coach or healer or spiritual entrepreneur, someone who's going to help others and know that their healing is going to continue to happen along the way. But there's a lot of unexamined or unacknowledged pain, and that's the one where you're saying, like, okay, I'm invested in helping everyone else because I'm actually not cool with something over here, but I haven't addressed it. And then that, yeah, it does sound noble, I agree, but it's people can feel it, people get drained by it, maybe, and you know, in the worst circumstances, it literally makes a mess with others. That is beyond just a vibe. It's like, okay, now there's a conflict or now there's a problem. So we don't want to be doing that with our clients. Don't want to be re-injuring them. And you also don't want to be repulsive to the right people who would really love to work with, someone who they can feel is solid and able to help them. And so, yeah, I think we should all be curious about our own healing journey as we go through trying to help others.
Yeah, I think that as a practitioner, we all need to be doing our inner work continually. Yeah. For our own well-being, of course. But also if we want to be doing this kind of work, we have to be doing our own inner work because we need to be safe for our clients. And we need to be safe for ourselves because we can get into trauma bonding and all of that stuff within our relationships with clients too. So it becomes unsafe for us as much as it does for our clients. And that's at least not where I want to be in my work.
I just wanted to ask you a question about, because I'm curious about it myself. I've got my own opinion about it. Curious to hear yours. I think that stepping into visibility, so that side of being an entrepreneur, and not all entrepreneurship looks the same, but for me, I'm usually more about building a personal brand. So being very visible, trying to lead with your unique perspective on things and having that be part of what helps people, even if they don't buy. And so what's challenging about that for a lot of people that also do feel that attraction to being visible, to having a message, but they also feel the fear of it. There's, of course, imposter syndrome. There's fear of visibility. There's fear of rejection. And I assume some of those can also be trauma responses or have roots in the past that maybe if I learned how to, for example, stand in front of a camera, but not be in my stress response or my survival response, that would be a good thing. And I know as I watch myself and others go through, I've heard, so many accounts, some more celebrating the journey than others about how hard it is. Oh, okay, I'm doing this and it's crushing me, but at least I'm doing it. And I'm wondering, is there maybe a kinder way to do it if I investigated what was really going on and then some of that's cleared up and now I can actually enjoy the act a bit more? Because that's what I want for myself and for others who feel the call to be more visible and to put themselves out there and to spread their work. It would be lovely if it was something we could actually enjoy instead of feel like it's life or death all the time.
So I think the struggle with visibility is maybe not universally, but very strongly trauma related. Because let's look at the little kids. How do they show up in the world?
Look at me.
They show up big.
Yeah.
Little kids have big energy. They show up. They are uninhibited. I mean, unless they're themselves are, dealing with some serious trauma, like, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, like those kids are big and loud and unencumbered.
Yeah.
What stops that? What silences that?
Right.
What makes them think that they cannot be seen or should not be seen? And that can come from any number of things. If there's, there can be, more overt traumas such as abuse, and neglect and rejection and abandonment and things like that, that can cause a child to dim their light and silence themselves. Those kinds of things can certainly impact that. But then there's also some more subtle, covert things that happen in our world that silence us and that makes us try to hide who we are.
Yeah.
And that goes into the toxic conditioning. So we have so much messaging about how we should look, for example. That alone can make it very hard to feel visible.
Yeah.
Hard to be seen, hard to allow us to express ourselves when there's so much criticism out there.
Yeah.
There's so many who are going to cast judgment on us for having a different opinion, for sharing our story, for not looking the way somebody might think is the way people should look. You can be too everything. You can be too fat. You can be too skinny, too tall, too short, too white, too dark, too whatever, too curly. You can be too much.
These are the real
anything.
problems. Yeah.
Right. But because the world is so very toxic in the way that we are conditioned to be, visibility is tough.
Yeah.
If I show up, what if I make a mistake? There's that fear of failure. What if I make a mistake or say something wrong? Or what if I don't look good enough? Or what if I, so many things.
Yeah.
And what I would say, for someone who's struggling with that is start to look inward. Where is that fear coming from? What in me needs some attention? What in me needs some healing around this to help me step out into the world and shine my light in the way that I'm here to do? And so doing that inner work is really important. Working with that part of yourself and bringing compassion and support to that part of yourself that is hurting, that is scared, that is feeling like they're not enough or they're too much. Give that part of yourself the attention it needs before you just force yourself into it.
Yeah.
Because forcing yourself to do something when your nervous system is not ready for it isn't helping yourself.
No.
It's just creating more anxiety and more dysregulation. So start with that inner work. What do I need to do for myself to help myself feel safe being seen? And that may begin by taking steps to allow yourself to be seen in your intimate relationships, with your family, with your friends. Start sharing things with people who are closer to you, and hopefully safer for you. And then start, as you do that inner work, and just give yourself safe spaces to stretch those wings a little bit, to help build those muscles and help yourself feel more confident. Then you can start going bigger. But be gentle with yourself around it, because it's not going to help you to push yourself well beyond your limits and set yourself up for failure.
Right. I'm glad you say it, because there's a lot of, nuance is tough. There's really almost all advice is great advice and awful advice, because to sound good or make a point, it needs to be absolute. And as soon as it's absolute, it's either black or it's white, and you lose the situation where the advice that sounds good actually would be bad for you in that moment. So that's a long way of saying, when people say, start before you're ready, I believe it and I practice it, but it doesn't mean push yourself when your nervous system shouldn't go there. And, people do struggle with that question. They've asked me or told me many times, about this question they live with of how much to push themselves versus how much to let themselves off the hook. And And of course, there's no one right answer for everyone. You have to live your life to experience that answer. But what you're saying gives permission for someone to say, right, neglecting my nervous system, pretending it should be just a shock absorber, that I can just throw myself into any situation and that's all I need to do, just ignore myself. That's that journey that just reinforces the trauma or doesn't let any light in. And it's like, no, take yourself in that sense seriously. Take care of yourself, take care of your nervous system, and take those steps that you made available. And I love what you suggested to the audience about what they can do with smaller steps. And as you grow in comfort with those smaller steps, take the next small step and the next small step. That is absolutely great advice, because I've seen people push themselves one or two steps too far in the noble intention to be brave, and all it did was re-injure themselves, right, and reinforce an injury and make them maybe worse off or more afraid than they were before.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great point, because I do agree starting before you're ready is necessary, because you're never going to be ready completely. Like you're not going to know you're ready until you do it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that doesn't mean you have to throw yourself over the cliff to, and go to extremes in the way that you start. Yeah. You challenge those growth edges, yes, and push up against those growth edges so that you can grow. And it's going to be scary. It's going to be, any growth edge that you go up again is going to be uncomfortable, but you can do it in a way that is supportive for yourself, and you're listening to yourself, and you can acknowledge, I'm going to take this step and acknowledge, okay, I know that there's this part of me that is afraid, and the part of me that is worried. Mm. And there's a part of me that's excited, and there's a part of me that is joyful. Acknowledge those parts and let them be. Be with those parts, but don't necessarily let them stop you. Mm. But listen to them, because if you're taking a step that is going to throw your nervous system into chaos, as you said, that's not helping you or anybody else. Right. But if you're doing something that's, challenging those growth edges and pushing you into the next step a little bit, then that's beautiful. That's important to do, because we're never going to know we're ready until we do it. Exactly. We have to try, but we don't need to abandon self or harm self in order to do that. Yes.
Yes. Well, that's amazing, Linda. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this talk, especially with the insights we have for the journey of a coach, a healer, an entrepreneur. There's multiple aspects, right? We've got our personal aspect, whether we have stuff we need to work through or want to work through. There's our journey as a entrepreneur who's growing and who needs to be visible. And maybe that's where we need some support, or even just to help our clients. It sounds like your upcoming training can probably help with any of those levels, but your work in general, how can people reach out to you if they want to learn more?
So the best way to reach out to me is you can contact me through my website. It's wellnessinharmony.com. And there you can learn more about the different services that I offer and the classes and programs and things like that I have coming up. On Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, you can look for me under either Linda Dieffenbach or Wellness in Harmony.
Cool. And I'll put that in the show notes as well, and you'll see it on the screen here if you're watching the YouTube version. Well, thank you so much, Linda. I really enjoyed having you here, and it was just rich what you brought from your story to us in terms of, the entrepreneurial journey, your journey, how we can help our clients, how we can help with their visibility, just all of it I found was really great to get that insight from you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Honor. Yay. And thank you so much for tuning in today. If you've got any insights you want to share with me, you can reach out to me over at It's Geoff Newton on Instagram, or you can follow more episodes on YouTube or on Spotify at The Geoff Newton Show. And if you're a coach or healer with something that you'd like to bring to this conversation on leadership, feel free to reach out to me via Instagram, and I'll share all the details with you about how you can do that, because you might just be a perfect fit. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.